Thank you. Hmm. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you. Oshin, you're such a dear Dharma brother and teacher to me. It's a joy to be here, and I've been admiring this Sangha from afar for quite a while. So it's a joy to meet all of you. I wanted to take this time to speak a little bit about EcoDharma in particular, and how that path is central to my own practice, and what brought me to EcoDharma, and what it has become since I've started practicing and working with the EcoDharma Retreat Center in the mountains here, which is a center that I currently run. Um, I think that I want to start with a little bit from the Buddha's original teachings in the Pali Canon, particularly looking at the term atta and the term anatta, and how that relates to EcoDharma and practicing in the natural world. So the word atta in Pali is the word for self, or more specifically, separate self, separated self. And it's key to the Four Noble Truths that were taught by the Buddha as a very central tenet of what Buddhism is. And it's essentially the idea that all suffering arises from this experience that we develop as human beings of being separate selves with an inside and an outside separated by the skin. And then the sort of corresponding term in Pali is anatta, which is no self, anatta. One could say that so much of our practice is in bearing witness to the processes that create this illusion of the separate self. We're able to begin to dissolve this illusion. And I think that this is a really, really core element of EcoDharma. Especially in the context of some of the Native American indigenous wisdom that has taught us that, first of all, that everything is alive and that we're family. We're all family together. We have this process where oftentimes we have emotional experiences, we have sensations, and we have a corresponding sense of either being drawn to these experiences or repulsed by them. And this is when a sense of self begins to galvanize, and oftentimes it results in these formations of thoughts, pancha, this proliferation of concepts and ideas. Which is a kind of enchantment, and gives us this false experience of being something separate. And then as we practice and we allow ourselves to we allow the membrane of experience of this so-called inside and outside to become more porous as we become more sensitive in our practice. And those proliferations of thoughts begin to quiet. And we can begin to find some space in between what we're feeling and the reaction that we have to what we're feeling. That drive to either want it or to want to get away from it. And when a space arrives between those things, then these different aspects of experience that we tend to call self start to lose tangibility. And I think that that's really important when we're looking at this in the context of practicing in relationship to what people often call our Mother Earth. Because Buddhism gives us a particular capacity, our meditation practice gives us a particular capacity to not only deeply witness the earth, but to begin to experience ourselves as not distinct, not separated, which is, one could say that, and this is perfectly in line with the Four Noble Truths, that so much of or perhaps all of the harm that we're doing to our world is born from this experience that we have of being separate. Which is why we have these distinctions of things like nature and civilization, that they're different things. Whereas in reality, there isn't a separation. There isn't a separation between us and all beings. And again, this is something that's very much of a central tenet to most Native American wisdom, the idea of all my relations. In Lakota, it's called Aho Matakwiasin. I don't know. Aho Matakwiasin is um, means all my relations. The idea that all beings are family. Mm. I wanted to speak a little bit about my own journey in relationship to this. Like Oshin mentioned, I am a fourth generation Coloradan here in Colorado, where I am right now. My great grandparents moved to Colorado to buy some farmland out on the plains near the mountains. Um, my grandfather grew up on this farm, and the farm is still in our family. So we have this farm that has been a part of our family, and our family has been a part of this farm since 1918, so 106 years. Um, and at some point, we started to lease it out to someone to farm it. But I've been visiting my whole life. And there was a point hmm, somewhere around 10 years ago when there started being talk of doing two things. One was selling the land for development, and the other one was leasing the mineral rights for oil extraction, and specifically for fracking, which is a process where they fracture shale formation underground. Um, and then start to extract the oil from the shale. And I was very conflicted, um, because it's this farm, this land is a place that I love very deeply, is a place that has been a part of my family, that my family has been a part of for so many generations. And the thought of this fracturing of the land broke my heart, um, and scared me. So I started to go and visit the land and practice meditation on the land with this intention of seeing if I could get a sense of if there is a living consciousness to the land, if the land has a living consciousness. And to be honest, when I first went, I sort of had this fantasy of discovering or uncovering some sort of a hidden spirit that it was pretty fantastical, really, my original thoughts about what it might be. But as I went and meditated on the land, I think that all of us have this experience of finding a beautiful place on earth and practicing meditation there. I started to realize that there's no secret hidden spirit, like a ghost, nothing like that, but that the land is completely alive, deeply. And I, and as I sat and started to let the experience of these fields of grass, the sun over my head, what the feeling of the land, how that lived in my body as I was there. I started to experience in a very embodied way that this is land spirit. And I felt like I met that land. And that this was a sentient, wise, and I think very intelligent being. And as I continued to meditate there, I started to notice the birds, beetles, the antelope. Um, there was a great horned owl that would come and visit me there. Hawks, crows, meadowlarks, uh, mice and voles and rabbits. And I started to realize that I couldn't separate these so-called separate beings from land spirit, from the spirit of this land. And as I felt into why that seemed to be, felt into the energy of this land, and I started to really witness that this land spirit is sort of lives in the world with a deeply open heart in such a way that everything that comes to the land becomes a part of becomes a part of it, becomes a part of her. So her sense of identity, in contrast to our own, doesn't end at the skin and isn't fixed. It's changing, dynamic, and always accepting of everything. So if you build a big building on a piece of land, the land spirit accepts and integrates that building into her identity. Which is to say that, this intelligence, this sentience, this wisdom is present everywhere. It becomes maybe a little bit more difficult to listen to in the middle of a city because there's so much that has been integrated, like human chaos. And when I started to not just understand, but feel in an embodied way, to have a living experience of this dynamic sense of identity that seems to exist outside of the human realm, and to realize that I am and always have been and always will be a part of that being, never separate, always accepted, always belonging exactly as I am. So, in the same way that when I was sitting on the farm and a hawk flying overhead would be indistinguishable from any other part of land spirit. It was true about me too, as I was sitting there. So this is really the core of my own journey in EcoDharma, what EcoDharma is for me. And in March, I was on residency at Jikoji Zen Center, where Oshin is a guiding teacher. The time that I had there for that month was really precious, practicing with a small sangha, holding the forms of this ancient tradition. Being a part of the offering of ministry to the larger community that would come to visit. And attending to a temple, which I feel like is a very sacred duty, and anybody who has the opportunity to do it is extremely lucky. And it made me think about our center here in Colorado, the EcoDharma Center. I'm thinking about, what is the temple in EcoDharma? Because it's not a building. There might be buildings there, but the temple is what I would call a land spirit. And who is the teacher? And again, and this is something that almost everybody in EcoDharma says, that the teacher is the land. And the Sangha, the animals, the trees, the water running through the stream that goes through the land, the air as it blows through the trees, the mountains, the insects, the flowers, the clouds. These beings are participating in sacred relationship together. There are Sangha. So if I were to summarize for myself, at the core of what EcoDharma is, I would say that the three treasures our land spirit, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And I think that this is very much in alignment with the original teachings of Sakyamuni Buddha, who, in the moment of awakening, touched the earth. The moment that is most often called earth witness. The awakening was witnessed by the earth, and the awakener witnessed the earth in such a way that there stopped being a distinction between them. Oftentimes the Buddha is quoted as saying something like, "I and all beings attained liberation together." Speaking about that moment of earth witness. And I think sort of the final piece is how this then manifests into action. How do we live in this world if we're grounded in this EcoDharma practice? And I think that this is something that blossoms into a flourishing wisdom around how we make our choices about what we do in the world. And that as a thought experiment, if most people in the world were to be in this kind of relationship with Earth, where there isn't a distinction between self and other, then the kind of actions that we would take in the world would look very, very different from the kind of actions that we see happening in the world right now. So I think that there's a component of healing connected to EcoDharma, and I think that to make a distinction between whether I am healing myself or whether I am healing the land, or whether the land is healing me, or whether the land is healing itself, those distinctions are meaningless. There isn't any distinction. Self and land heal together as a single event. So I guess that's all I've got. And I'm curious, more than anything, love to meet this Sangha a little bit. And I'm just curious if you have enriching thoughts or things to share in relationship to this. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But personally, I'm more interested in hearing from you.